Hi, this is Michael Grant. I'm reading a little bit from Villain. This is part of chapter 1. It rhymes with villain. Hey, freak, what are you looking at? The drunk tank was a large room lined with a wall-mounted steel bench. The floor was bare cement, sloped down to a drain in the center of the room. There was a single window with both bars and thick wire over filthy glass, allowing not sunlight or cheer, but a grim gray reminder that there was an outside world. The walls of the drunk tank were painted a sickly yellow, the color of baby puke, which went perfectly with the reek of vomit. There were maybe 15 adult men in the room, and the barely 18-year-old Dylan Poe. And Dylan felt very, very bad. Bad to a degree he had never felt before. Is this what a hangover is? Oh my God. Dylan being Dylan, part of his mind was already looking for the potential humor in the situation, and it wasn't hard to find. He'd gotten very drunk the night before after walking into a bar and asking for whiskey like some cowboy in an old movie. Having no choice or will of his own at that moment, the bartender had poured, and Dylan had gagged down the first fiery shot and then another, and the next thing he knew, he was right now, waking up with throbbing eyes, an aching head, and a mouth that tasted like he'd spent the night eating roadkill. No, not roadkill, that was generic. It was funnier to be specific, like a dead beaver? Like a dead possum? Rats were overdone. Like a dead raccoon? Yeah, dead raccoon. His mouth tasted like he'd spent the night chewing on dead raccoon. It was an absurd situation. 18-year-old walks into a bar, like the start of a joke, where a priest, a rabbi, and an imam walk into a bar, and yeah, he admitted wearily, his brain was not quite up for writing jokes. I'm not looking at you, Dylan managed to say to the belligerent man, a sandpaper tongue thick in a cotton mouth. Dylan sat up, rubbed sleep from his eyes, and instantly vomited on the concrete. Hey, asshole! This from the same man who challenged him. He was a big, very hairy white man, although it was hard to comment on his complexion given that he was almost entirely covered in tattoos, including the tattooed tear at the corner of one eye that testified to a murder committed. Chest hair that included some gray sprigs spouted from a lurid chest tattoo of an American flag where the stars had been replaced by swastikas. What's the matter with you, boy? Dylan stood up, wobbly, weak, and deeply unhappy. Nasty little punk stinking up the place, Tattoo said. This, Dylan thought, was not really fair. The place had already reeked of puke and piss and worse. There was a man passed out, face down on the bench, a brown stain in his trousers. Tattoo swaggered over, grabbed Dylan's t-shirt, and kicked him in the knee. Dylan dropped to the floor, landing painfully on the concrete. Clean that up, boy. What? What? How would this happen? How is he here on his knees? Part of him counseled quiet submission. The man was bigger and had friends, but part of him, despite the alcohol-fueled misery in his brain, simply could not shut up. Can I use that mop on your head? First rule of stand-up comedy, never let a heckler get the upper hand. Tattoo, whose limp salt and pepper hair did arguably resemble a mop, gaped in astonishment. Then he grinned, showing a row of overly bright, cheap, false teeth. Well, I guess I get to hand out my first ass-kicking of the day. Dylan closed his eyes and focused. Almost immediately, the brutal hangover faded, and subtle but utterly impossible changes began to transform Dylan's face and body. He said, ass-kicking or ass-kissing? This earned him a hard kick meant for his stomach, but which deflected off of his arm, knocking his hand into his own puddle of puke. Bad. But on the other hand, his hangover pain was fast receding. A relief, but not the point. The point was that Dylan Poe was changing, physically. The change was so subtle that at first the tattooed man didn't even notice. Dylan Poe, a decidedly average-looking white boy who on his best day might be charitably described as cute, kind of, but certainly never really attractive, let alone hot, became a young man with perfectly clear skin, black hair swept up and back into something that evoked a Japanese samurai bun, and gorgeous big blue eyes. The baby fat he still carried disappeared to be replaced by toned muscle. Dylan was not in a happy or generous frame of mind. He had clearly screwed up the night before, outing himself as a mutant. And now he was in a cage with men, every single one of whom looked meaner and bigger and tougher than he, well, aside from the weeping tourist in the chinos and canary yellow polo shirt. But it didn't matter, because Dylan Poe, this gorgeous version of Dylan Poe, was more than capable of dealing with Tattoo. And we'll stop there.